the arts coordinator for all of San Diego now, right?
It's up there.
Sorry, oh, that, yeah, that. But he was our past president of CMEA, and he was the one that's really been instrumental in most of the changes that we've seen in California over the last couple of years. He's also the incoming president, NAFI president for this, Troy says that too, yep, for the Western Division. And he's going to come and talk to us about the standards. He made sure when he was president that we had a writer on that committee, so we had input into that. And now we just want to know how they're going to be impacting us, because right now I'm making these poor children learn these standards, the old standards and the California standards, telling them that this is what they're going to be having very soon in California. So give Russ a nice.
All right. Thank you. It's good to be here. I always enjoy coming up to San Jose State. We for several years we were having our executive board meetings just in the office.
In the music ed lab, because we were trying to save money.
Yeah. Yeah, so a lot of that work actually happened in this building.
Because we, I think that those of you that are my students in class know that about 5 years ago, when we had a pretty substantial crash in the economy, both NAFME National and CMEA really took a hit at the conferences, lost money, and so we were not going to be fiscally sound. So we started meeting not in hotel, rooms anymore, but we would fly up to San Jose State and meet in our sorry little lab in there. And that was where most of the work got done, yeah.
Music education is so glamorous. But anyway, I want to say in front of you, you all know how impressive Dr. Hollinger is, but she's had an amazing impact on the state and across the country, actually, for her work. And sometimes, it's funny, I seem to get more, I think this happens to everybody. The further away from home you go, the more respect you get. So sometimes when you're at home, it's like, oh yeah, I know this person, whatever. But know that her influence has had an impact far beyond this campus. And so just know that you're lucky to have her here and working with you. So this is the title of my presentation, National Art Standards in Music. But last time I was up here speaking to your class, it's been a couple years. I'm not able to get up here every year. So in the time we have, I'll do this topic. But also, I want to answer any questions you might have about whatever that piques your interest. So this is not going to take the full time, is what I'm saying, and I want to give you some more time. I want to start, actually not by this slide. I want to show you a search that I just did on EdJoin. Have you gone on this site just for fun? So this is the state employment listing, basically. Now, not every single school district is on this site. The big ones like LA, San Diego, I don't know what San Francisco does, or some of the big ones. They have like their own site, so when you go to look on EdJoin, you're going to find most of the districts, but not all. Some of the big ones have their own. So it's fun. You can just search music, and so what I did is I found 137 job postings for a total of 134 job vacancies. That's right now. I suspect that a lot of those, because I have friends that have told me, a lot of those are openings that are like open right now, like there's no teacher there. So it might be an elementary teacher, or the kids just aren't getting pulled out for general music or instrumental. This is different than even just 2 years ago. So we have all these positions open. When we get further toward the end of this month in May, June, this number is going to soar. I just about every week I check this out just to see what the numbers are.
I have to tell you, when I graduated, there were like maybe 3 jobs open in Southern California for music. It was a very different picture.
Yeah.
And it's going to continue like this.
Yeah. So we're in much better shape. There's a lot of things that have happened in the state. to change this picture and attitudes about music education in schools. And I think that we don't maybe toot our horn enough, but we as music educators and our associations, we've done a heck of a job in getting that message out there, and that's changing that number. So that's like empirical data right there about the demand for music education. So it's very exciting. I have gone around the country, literally, telling people outside California that we are going to have jobs. We have jobs right now that are open, our state schools. So you all know that's the CSUs that pumps out you folks. There's not going to be enough of you. We don't have enough of you in the system right now. So I'm not going out there trying to take away your jobs. I'm trying to just go out there and make sure we have quality people filling positions. The last time this happened, where we had a ton of positions open, districts did some stupid things. They hired a lot of people that didn't have what you're getting. And they didn't do well. And so if a principal has someone that doesn't have your background, and they're trying to go in there and teach music, which is a hugely highly skilled thing, it's not going to go well. And then that principal's going to be turned on, oh, music education, it doesn't work. Music education doesn't work. I had a music teacher, it wasn't good. So it gives our profession a bad name. So as much as possible, I'm trying to make sure that we have quality people filling the role. But we also have principals and district people that aren't putting in people that aren't highly qualified to do the work. So I just want to give you a lay of the land. You've picked not only the most rewarding profession you can possibly pick, but there's actually going to be like probably choices that you're going to have. Isn't that amazing? I think it's amazing because that wasn't what it was.
No, it wasn't what it was for us.
Not that long ago. Or for us, that's true. All right, so launching into the standards piece of our day. Oh, I have objectives, look at that. You should all have objectives when you teach. So I feel weird about where I'm standing here, where you're all sitting. So we're going to learn more about the status with performing arts standards, visual performing arts standards, where we are in California with this right now. So we'll talk about that. Can you contrast, Diana was talking about the old standards, contrasting the old with the new. Then I'm going to show you the architecture of the new National Core Arts Standards, how they're set up, and they are set up differently than our state standards are. And then answer any questions you might have. And that's going to be probably my favorite part, because I'm always interested by the questions that you're asking, so what's going on in your mind. So don't be bashful when we get to that part. All right, so our current book of standards in the state of California, these were adopted in 2001. So they're like almost 14 years old now. That's the ones that have the creative expression, artistic perception, historical cultural content, aesthetic valuing, and connecting. Those are the 5 strands. So we've had this for a long time. They were informed by the national standards in music and art. Those national standards were created in the early 90s. And one of my favorite things to say about those standards is that you have a set of visual art standards, you have a set of music standards, theater, dance, and the only thing that really connected those standards, as they said, was the binding of the book. There was nothing, they were done irrelevant of the other. They did not work together to make those standards. The music people got together, created some standards, same thing for art. So when California did the standards, they wanted those to be aligned and have the 5 content strands, or 5 strands, right. And sometimes the nomenclature, it gets in your way, right? And I still haven't figured it out after all these years. But you have, they wanted those to be aligned. So California took the best of the national standards, created our own, and but this time around with the national standards, all of the organizations and the national level got together, and they are aligned with each other, which does some interesting things, which I'll show you in a little bit. But here's where we are with our standards right now. So I already said that, I think am I on TV if I'm over here? Yep, okay. Oh, what about here? Okay, here. I think this is gonna work better because I can see you, I can see this, there. This might be my spot. That just was not working for me.
I could tell.
As I said, the 2001 standards are still in place, but we have now a bill,
You wanna move?
which, this would probably be a good time to pass these out. Thank you. We have a bill, SB 725, authored by Senator Lonnie Hancock, who is, I think she's from Berkeley, to direct the State Superintendent of Public Instruction to convene a panel of experts, and I'm reading this for a reason, to get this right, to recommend new Baptist standards for adoption no later than June 30th, 2017. Okay, so this is the fact sheet. So, did everybody get an email yesterday from the CMEA, or was that just a small group?
I didn't even get one.
On this?
Yeah.
And did you click it and it didn't work? Anyway, it didn't work.
I didn't get it.
It'll work. We have to figure that out. But it's from Trish Adams. It came out from yeah. Okay. So we have an advocacy service that's going to help us with getting our voice, our collective music education voice, to the legislature to advocate for this bill. This is the first time we ever have used it, and it didn't work. So you'll probably get another email after it's fixed. But we're going to need your help. Everyone involved in the profession, we want to advocate for these new standards. Now, you might not even like the standards, but know that we are not in California just going to take the national standards and plop them down in California. What the bill says is we're going to convene a panel of experts. We will, I'm sure, be heavily informed by what happened at the national level to create the state ones, but they could be different. The point I want to make from an advocacy perspective is that CMEA has never ever, to my knowledge, and anyone else's knowledge, ever had a bill in the legislature. When I was your age, they used to tell us, CMEA is fighting for you in Sacramento. And then I got on the board and realized that that really wasn't true. They really were never in Sacramento. Well, they would go to Sacramento, but they weren't in Sacramento like they are now. Now we have a lobbyist. Now we have someone who walks the halls basically every day in the name of music education. So people complain to me that the membership dues are, well, for you they're less, which is good. We want you to not have to. But when you become in the profession, right now it's $139 a year. People complain to me that's too high, and I'm like, $139 and you have a lobbyist representing you in Sacramento? That's a bargain. By the way, your union dues, and I'm not anti-union at all, but your union dues are going to be like, I don't know, 60, 70, I don't even know what they are. We haven't paid those in a while.
$110.
$110 a month. It comes out of your check and you have no choice.
I never even look.
Well, it was like 60 when I was in the profession, when I left into administration. So $110 a month for something that you have no choice about, and so $139 for a year, and you have access to your section, your state, national, magazines, professional resources, and a lobbyist for your cause in Sacramento. So it's a bargain. So don't come to me and tell me it's too much. All right, there you go. We have this bill. The point of this conversation I'm trying to have with myself is that if we get this bill passed, we have political clout. And then we do the next thing. Okay? So this is kind of an innocuous little thing. We're doing a standards bill. It's like, yeah, it's been 14 years, it's time. Legislature isn't gonna, but we're getting used to the legislative process. We're getting used to what it takes to do a bill. Getting used to working with our lobbyist. And then so after we pass this innocuous little thing, we can do something that's a little bit more of a push for music education. So that's why, that's the reason, the secret reason that I think this is really super important. We've never had a bill before.
Because it would happen anyway. It would just take longer.
Right.
Right.
Exactly. So that's the thing. So now there's also been this standards correlation project, and I've got some initials up here. It's the alphabet soup. Welcome to education. And there's alphabet soup in any profession. There's some that you should know. CDE is California Department of Education, so that's good to know. And TCAP is the California Arts Project. I just found out why they didn't just call it CAP, California Arts Project, because when they created this, there was something called the CAP test.
I remember the CAP test.
That was not a good thing.
No.
And so they did not want to be compared to the CAP test, so they went with TCAP. So that's why the T is there. There, now you know something that most people don't. So they did this correlation project. They looked at our current national, state standards. They looked at the national standards, and and we had music education, in the profession. CMEA chose these people. That's another thing CMEA has been very involved with all this work. So they came up with this statement, and I'm just going to read the statement to you because this is the result of a lot of work, and this is a very finely tuned, highly crafted statement from 4 music educators, 2 elementary, 2 secondary, that looked at the state standards that we have, looked at the national standards, and this is what they said. The California Baptist standards are inherent and implied within the National Core Arts Standards. By the way, there's some more VAPA you should know, National Core Arts Standards, NCAS. The net is cast wider in the National Core Arts Standards than the California Baptist standards, but eliminates the pedagogical detailing. In other words, our California standards are more specific about when you should know how to play an 8th note. Okay, it's more specific. The national standards do not say that about when exactly things should happen. It's more conceptual. You'll see. This freedom would allow districts to create a curriculum to fit the specific needs of their students, so there's more flexibility. In secondary, at the secondary level, the strands are separated according to courses of study. I'll show you those. Which is a better fit as it allows outcomes specific to the course of study or ensemble. So here's the deal. We have a set of music standards at the secondary level, and it doesn't matter if you're in steel drum, choir, mariachi, electronic music, AP theory, doesn't matter. It's all the same set of standards. So what this is we've broken out standards for ensembles, standards for composition, standards for theory, so it makes a lot more sense as far as that goes. I'm here now. The NCAS are more focused on providing conceptual models for student outcomes, while the California Baptist standards focus on providing pedagogical examples. Okay? So California standards, this is the work that students should be doing. National standards, here is what students will be able to do, be able to do when they're done. Okay, it's a shift. This is the TCAP CME report to the Instructional Quality Commission, which is a sub-branch of the CDE, California Department of Education. So you're getting a little lesson in state curriculum and stuff. Now, this is a slide I like to use, and when I say the old way, when you were in school, as in K-12, which for you was not as long ago as it was for us, maybe you had more forward-thinking music instruction. I don't know. But I'm just going to say old way as in probably how she and I got taught, which wasn't bad. It inspired me, inspired Diana. We went into the profession, but as we are in the era of Common Core and accountability and all these other things, the old way is not really going to cut it. And it's really not the best way to teach music, frankly. Okay, so here's these are like oversimplification kind of things. So the old way is emphasis on knowledge and skills. The new way is seeking to instill music literacy. I'm gonna say literacy about 6 times. Literacy, not right now, but throughout the course of my presentation. Emphasizing conceptual understanding, concepts. The old way is play it like this. I'm going to sing it for you, now do it back to me. The new way is to reflect on the actual process in which musicians engage, which is creating, performing, and responding. Which, by the way, those are the three artistic processes of the National Core Art Standards. You'll see those in a little bit. Okay? So I'm going to keep kind of going on this theme. So if we unpack the standards, and you're going to see that I steal slides from people. At my level, I'm allowed to steal slides if I want to, as long as I have permission, right? So I stole this from the California Arts Project. So, and it's sometimes fun to look at the standards in another content, or another discipline. So we're going to look at visual art standard. Okay, so California State Visual Art Standard 2.1, solve a visual arts problem that involves the effective use of the elements of art and the principles of design. Okay, so what's the equivalent one for the National Core Arts Visual Art Standard? Sort of the equivalent one is engage in making a work of art or design without having a preconceived plan. Okay, so what are the differences? Well, in the California one, you have to know these things. You have to know the elements of art, principles of design, and the technical skill involved in doing two-dimensional 3D art. That's inferred. But the first two bullets are stated because it says elements of art. Okay, it's stated there. Well, then they're going to combine elements and principles to solve a problem. Okay. With a national standard, elements of art, principles of design, all these things are inferred. It does not say anything about those things. This is more about a conceptual idea. But it does not tell you what it is that you have to know in art to be able to do that concept. So the National Core Art Standards, to do these things, it requires that you have content and skill in the discipline. That is why you are here at the university, to learn these things. In the California standards right now, you can kind of look at those and kind of get the curriculum right out of the book. With the National Core Art Standards, you have to know about music. You have to know your discipline. And then you have to make those decisions about how to do the standards. So you have more flexibility and a higher degree of a requirement for your own knowledge of music to be able to use them effectively. So this is going to be a shift for all of us. So, but the do part, there is more to it. This generate and explore ideas for art making, that wasn't really over here. And, but both of these are combined elements, principles, creative spark. Okay, I'm going to kind of keep pushing through because I'm just going to kind of keep layering these ideas, and I think it's going to become more clear to you about what these differences are the more slides I show you, kind of a thing. So here's a unit that I created based on the California Baptist Standards and the Common Core literacy standards in the technical subjects. So just an aside, in Common Core, and whatever you might have heard in the news or whatever, California is moving ahead with Common Core. There's not really a lot of controversy in California. There's still a lot of controversy on Fox News and in other states, but not in California. We have a majority in the Democratic majority in the legislature. We have a governor who's supportive. We have a state superintendent who's supportive. The anti-Common Core thing does not really have the traction here. One of the reasons is we did not move as quickly as, for instance, New York. New York adopted Common Core like that, and all of a sudden started holding teachers accountable for Common Core standards through testing with no time, just like go. And teachers' evaluations were held accountable to the test. Even though 60% of us, our content isn't even on the test. So there was a lot of backlash against Common Core because of those things. We didn't do that in California. We have, for the second year, suspended API, which is our Academic Performance Index, to give schools time to do this shift, this readjustment, without consequences. So it's been done a lot, and there is no movement right now around using testing data to evaluate teachers. There is in like 4 districts in California. I think Oakland is one of them. Fresno is another. And they're called a certain thing. I can't remember. But California didn't take race to the top funding. I know I'm throwing a lot of things out. But we did not take that funding because we said we don't want to hold teachers accountable to the test. That's not fair. So we didn't go down that road. Oh wow, I got really off the topic. Okay, so what I want to say is that in Common Core, there is a literacy overlay on every content area. And the arts happen to be a technical subject. Think about technique on your instrument, okay? We're a technical subject. In the glossary for Common Core, if you look under technical subjects, you find visual performing arts. So we're a technical subject. So there's this section of Common Core, the literacy standards and the technical subjects. And they're only like 4 pages. It's not a huge thing. But it is how Common Core applies to us in music. From a literacy perspective, what makes a student literate in music? And when they start talking about text, we have text in music. We have the notes. We have the written biographies of composers in the historical and cultural context. We have the score analysis. We have all those texts that relate to our profession. So from the California VAPA standards and from the Common Core literacy standards, I developed a unit on Robert W. Smith's This Great Steamboat Race, which is basically a middle school piece based on an actual historical event in 1870. And so I had a very rich piece from which I can draw from and develop a unit based on the Common Core standards and the VAPA standards. What would it look like? And I was able to work on this with one of the English language arts coordinators at the county office with me. So I had some really good guidance about how this would work. And it's, you often will hear music teachers, and I don't know if you've heard this, music teachers say, oh, I already teach Common Core, I already do that. That's just inherent in what I do. But I decided, well, what if I actually looked at those standards and consciously tried to address those standards when I taught this one piece of music? And actually, there's some really cool things that happened. There's some things that I would do a little differently. Now, before I get into this, you don't have time, whether you're in elementary or secondary, to do this thorough a job with every single piece of music that you do. But what I challenge ensemble directors is do this in depth with one of your festival pieces. Dive in with one. You have time to do this with one. And I actually decided to try this out. I was the honor band conductor for the San Diego Unified School District Middle School Honor Band. So I did, and of course I only had 3 days of rehearsal. But I did a lot of these things with them. And what's amazing is that the students knew that piece so much better through these things that I'm about to show you. They played it great, even though I didn't maybe have as much rehearsal time. So we're putting this learning back into their hands rather than me up on the podium telling them what to do. So we're doing that shift that we want students to be able to access the literacy on their own. Okay, so what is it that I'm talking about? So I started with a lithograph, a painting basically, of the actual event. So there's this thing. And I didn't pass out the music, they didn't even know what this was. I just had them look at it and we did something called visual thinking strategies, blah, 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 blah. But anyway, we started with a visual art piece, not doing music. So it's, in Common Core, it talks about different media. So I used different media. Then we read the story about the Great Steamboat Race. And we talked about that. Haven't passed the music out yet. Then, when I passed the music out, we didn't read it right away. We annotated it. So we started going through. I had them, circle things that they didn't know what it meant. There's something in the piece. It says like a calliope, which is like that little steam-powered organ on a steamboat. So they all circled that, and I said, "Oh, calliope, that's a good thing." And I happened to have a YouTube video that I could show of the calliope, and so we just made sure they understood all of the symbology on the page before we played a note. Now, I'm not saying you do this, like I said, every time, but this was an approach to really look at the text before they read it from a musical perspective. So then we read the music after we annotated it, and I had them marking up. Do you think they performed it better the first time after annotating it and marking up than they would have if they had just looked at it? Yeah. So then we read and annotated the conductor's notes. So what's great about so much of the music that's published today is that when you open up the cover, on the inside, and I have music, there's pages sometimes. If you open up at the Kelly store or something, there's just pages of information. I'm an adjunct at a community college. I'm doing a Markowski piece called Elixir. There's an analysis, like a 5-page analysis by Mark Dickey from Cal State Fullerton. In the front, before you even get to the music, there's this one. So why would I just keep that to myself? Why shouldn't students be reading about this themselves and getting used to the idea of what it's like to read the conductor's notes? Why should the conductor be the only one to have that information and volunteer it when they feel like it? It's like this old idea before the internet that I have the information, I'm not giving it to you. Well, now everyone has it in their pocket. So it's a whole different way of looking at things. So when I was developing this unit with my English language arts coordinator, and I showed her the music, I just sort of opened this up, and she said, "Oh, what's that?" And I said, "Oh, that's the conductor's note." She says, "Oh my gosh, that's your technical text." Oh, light bulb. So now when I do stuff, I copy that stuff off. I share that out. Sometimes I just PDF it, email it out, so we're not wasting paper or whatever. But so then we listen to primary source recordings of Calliope. I mentioned that, and then there's also some quotation from Al Jolson tune. I can't remember the name of it now. Waiting for the Robert E. Lee. That's it. So the funny thing is the Great Steamboat Race was about something that happened in 1870, and Waiting for the Robert E. Lee is a 1920s song. So that could not have been heard on that boat 50 years previous. So we got into all that. Well, why would the composer pick this Waiting for Robert E. Lee if we're doing something from 1870? I mean, there's all these layers of things. And then, I don't know if you know anything about Al Jolson, but, he would perform in blackface. There's a whole other level of conversation. But I would suggest to you that most of our colleagues out there doing this piece do not explore this information with their students.
Can I just make an aside? Those of you that are in the 370 class, we're using comprehensive musicianship as a way, a lens for preparing, and that's which all the teaching music through performance are on, and they do a lot of this work for us.
Yep.
And so this is already a shift that we've been encouraged to make in our profession. Yeah,
and it's so much more accessible than it used to be. When we started, to get a recording of something that you could do in the band,
you had to call somebody who played it.
Call someone that played it, or there was this place called West Coast Music on the west coast of Florida. That was the only place that had CDs. If you could, Tower Records actually had some stuff.
Yeah.
But they would a section this big in their their whole. So, but now again, it's in your pocket. So all this stuff is so much more accessible. Listen to recordings of other ensembles. Then record your ensemble. Students listen and respond in writing. I I don't adjudicate festivals as much anymore, but I always wonder why, it is very apparent to me that the kids have never ever listened to their ensemble. They only have heard it from where they sit. I think as people on the podium, we're in control of that. We hear it all the time, but do they get a chance to hear it from that perspective? So why would we do it? So music teachers, Common Core, they're going to make my kids read, and I'll do all this stuff that has nothing to do with music. That's not what we're saying. If you do this stuff, your kids are going to be more literate musicians, which is what we want. It's that comprehensive musician.
Yep, this is the perfect CMP lesson for those of you that are working on yours right now.
And it's gone. Okay, so so that transitions us. So these are the kind of the shifts. I'm just kind of talking about the shifts from the old to the new. And so now we have this chorus standard. So let me talk a little bit about where they. Oh, actually, I'm going to show a video that kind of gives you a little overview. So before I show the video, let me mention a couple things. I mentioned earlier about how the national standards in the visual performing arts were all developed differently, kind of apart from each other. So when he talks about the national art standards, or the art standards, he's talking about some from like 1992 or something like that. He's talking about the national standards. This is a national level thing, so he's not talking about California. And by the way, this is from the National Art Education Association. It goes to figure that the art people, the visual art people, would have the coolest looking video because they're visual oriented people. And so we don't have one like this for music. It's fine,
No,
but
it's awful. It's really bad.
well, it's like a talking head. This is really cool. So I like to show this video. And it just gives you a little overview of the National Core Art Standards in a fun little way.
Then and now, celebrating next generation art standards. The National Art Education Association is a founding member of the National Coalition for Core Art Standards, a group of like-minded arts education communities writing next generation standards for dance, media arts,